He needs to hire employees for his company, and so he decides to do an interview for the position he has available. So he disguises himself as a street sweeper in front of his company and puts his plan into action. Being there disguised as a street sweeper, he takes out of his pocket a certain amount and puts it under a potato next to him, and there he remains disguised. Then a girl passes by and approaches her. Seeing the money, disguises herself and bends down, taking the money and putting it in her bag. She gets up and leaves. Meanwhile, he watches her, indignant at what happened there. Then he repeats the same process as before, looks from one side to the other and puts the money under the potato in the same place, and then continues there as if picking up garbage. Then a boy appears, notices the money and bends down. He looks at him and asks what he is doing there. And the boy asks what he is looking at and why not mind his own business, and calls him a garbage collector, and the boy go. So he takes off his sneakers, takes a value from inside and puts it back under the potato and watches. At that moment, a young woman passes by and takes the money, but unlike the others, she asks him if the money is his. So the guy gets up, feels his pockets and says it's hers. So the girl hands him the money, and at the same time he says he thought he had lost all his money and thanks her for giving it back. Then she says he didn't need to thank him because she had imagined he had lost it, and so he returned it, and saying he had to go to an employee interview, she says goodbye to him and leaves. And he remains there disguising himself and watching, and at that moment a boy passes, and when he puts his cell phone in his pocket he falls to the floor, and the boy doesn't notice. At that moment the girl who returned the money notices the cell phone and calls for the boy and returns it. Meanwhile, in the company's waiting room, the first two candidates arrive, and the secretary greets them and asks them to sit down and wait for her to notify the owner of the company. They sit down and the boy says that the vacancy is already his, while the girl says poor thing. Meanwhile the secretary asks them to wait because there is still a candidate, and that as soon as she arrives, everyone will be served. At that moment, a girl enters the room and she says she was there for the interview. So the secretary greets her and asks her to wait and not to notice for not having a chair for her to sit on. She says she has no problems and goes to the corner of the room. At that moment the boy asks her if she came to run for the vacancy. She confirms, and he starts laughing at her, calling her smelly, saying that she wouldn't have a chance and that the vacancy would be for one of the two who were already there and for sure his. So the other girl says she agrees that she really smells and that the vacancy would be hers because her father has influence in the company. Then the girl who arrived last apologizes because she had to walk, so the boy says that if he were her, he would go back to the hole she came from, because she wouldn't have any chance there. Then the girl who was already there gets up and takes the curriculum from her hand, wanting to see what she has, so she throws the curriculum on the floor saying she has nothing. The boy takes it and starts to leaf through it, wanting to see what is important in her curriculum, and starts mocking her experience as a receptionist, and that she worked in a bakery, and that she had studied in public college, and that she was poor, and finally mocking from the college where she studied. So the boy says that apparently she is asking for help and that she can go look elsewhere, because there was no charity there. Then the girl asks them to return her curriculum vitae and takes it back, while the two keep saying that they feel sorry for her and saying that it will be charitable. She takes her wallet and withdraws a value and gives it to her to go buy a little outfit so that next time interview he was dressed appropriately. In this the other girl says that she doesn't just need clothes, but new shoes too, because hers didn't agree, and who is it that comes to a job interview with that precatinia of that one? Then the indignant secretary asks about their behavior, as they were there for a job interview in a boxing ring. So the guy tells the secretary that that company is very good at accepting any kind of people and gives the girl the money so she can buy clothes for the next interview. Then the secretary says that's enough and that the boss is an honest businessman and that everyone there has equal chances and they behave, and she'll call him right away to finish the interview. In this the girl returns the money to the boy saying that she doesn't need it and thanks. Then he and the other make fun of her because she won't take the money. The secretary knocks on the door asking for permission and the boss sends her in. So she is surprised to see him dressed as a street sweeper, and then says that the candidates are already at the reception waiting. So he says he's just going to change and he'll be gone. So he changes, taking off his Carry Lab coat and putting on his blazer, and soon arrives at the reception. He greets all the candidates for the vacancy and they all say yes. Then he starts by saying that they may not remember him, but they have met earlier. Then the girl who had returned the money looks at him in amazement, and he continues saying that the interview had already been done and that at that moment he would only give the result of the candidate who was better and who will occupy the vacancy. Then the boy questions that he was not interviewed by anyone and that he has some mistake. Then the other girl asks if he's the guy who was picking through the garbage earlier. The other two indignantly ask themselves, rubbish, what rubbish? Then the boy says it's absurd and wants him to look at his curriculum, saying that he studied at the best universities and that he has experience. So he asks to see the girl's curriculum too. She hands it over saying it's better than his and the others. So the boss says that the curricula are very good, very well filled, and that they studied in universities abroad and that he has a lot of experience. But he says he doesn't want to know about training, but about values. And he asks them if they both have values, and they say yes. The boy says that he has values and principles and that he has the best recommendations in his curriculum and that if he didn't have principles and values someone would recommend him. So he asks the silent girl in the corner if she has values and principles. She starts to speak and says yes, but is interrupted by the guy who says look at her situation and that she shouldn't have any of that and that she should be a person with ulterior motives in disguise, while the other says she looks poor. At this point the boss interrupts and calls them cynics, hypocrites, and asks if they don't remember some money they took earlier, so they think about everything that happened earlier. So the boss shows him something and asks if they don't remember. They both are amazed and don't know what to say. Then the girl who was silent all the time said that she knew that she had seen him earlier, so the boy says that it is absurd and that the money was on the floor and that he now wanted to accuse them of theft. Then the girl says that the money had no owner, and the boss says he did, that the money was his and that they didn't even have the decency to ask who owned the money. So I want my money back and you can go look for a job somewhere else on another corner, give me the money back. And so they leave saying the company didn't deserve them. Then the boss apologizes to the girl for the unfortunate incident and that even though she has little experience, and that for her values and her ethics she is the best candidate to fill the vacancy and that even though she has no experience he will train there. So she thanks him for the opportunity and assures him that he won't regret it, and they happily leave for the boss room.